Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. With me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, it's a dry Oregon this morning. It's cool out. There are raindrops still hanging around on the branches of the trees. There's more rain in the forecast, of course, because it's spring here in Oregon. But right now, I just came in from a nice 2-mile walk. If you've listened or to recent podcasts I've shared in the Facebook group, I'm on this morning light routine that I am just loving. So dive back in a couple of episodes ago. I talked about it or come visit us in the Facebook group. I'm talking more about morning light and why it's so valuable for us. But I am getting myself out, regardless, rain or shine here in Oregon, for my morning walks. And this morning, I just didn't happen to get hit by any raindrops. So it's a good day. I am sharing this week on the podcast. Actually, before we get there, I do have a prize winner this week. It is, if you'd like to be entered into the prize drawing, I do a prize drawing every other week for some alcohol minimalist swag. All you got to do is leave a review of the podcast or of my book, Breaking the Bottle Legacy, wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you pick up the book, and I will find you, add you into the drawing. Today's winner is Wendy WNNY. Wendy WNNY. You submitted a podcast review and just said, thank you for your words of wisdom. I appreciate you very much. Well, thank you. I appreciate you listening. And so, like I said, go enter in if you are the winner. So Wendy WNNY, please email me, molly@mollywatts.com. Let me know that is you, and I will mail you out some alcohol minimalist swag. All right. Okay. On to this week's show. This is a podcast or an interview that I did a bit ago with Ian Blessing. Isn't that a great name? Ian Blessing. And Ian is a co-founder of All the Bitter, non-alcoholic bitters company. I learned about this company from Adrian Stillman Krause over at Dry Goods Beverage Company and was just inspired to go talk to him and learn more about their journey and this whole non-alcoholic beverage industry that has just been erupting over the last couple of years, and how they are a small, local, U.S.-based company and what they're doing in terms of creating some organic, all-natural, non-alcoholic bitters. You're going to love this conversation, and I hope that you are investigating some of these companies and some of these products that I've been talking to in terms of non-alcoholic options. They are really great, and they really help us, right, to include alcohol-free days in our lives. There is nothing wrong with that. That is a great thing to have. And I am so excited that there's actually all this work happening in the non-alcoholic space that is supporting people to add more alcohol-free days into their lives. I'm also talking about this week, if you're listening to this when this drops, which is on Wednesday, March 8th, then on Friday, March 10th, I will be going live in my Facebook group talking about my plans for 70% alcohol free for the year and how you can do that. A strategic plan for different months based on whether it's a 30-day month, a 31-day month, and everything. I've got a great idea. I hope you'll join me. Come into the group, come listen and learn and join arms with me. Whether or not you make it doesn't matter. The goal is there, and we want to set a goal for incorporating more alcohol-free days into our life. I definitely do. I'm aiming for better than 50%. I'm aiming for 70%. And I'm going to be talking about that on Friday in the Facebook group. So come on in and learn more. All right. Without further ado, here is my conversation with All the Bitter company co-founder, Ian Blessing. Hey, Ian, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time to be on the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. I am just super excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So, okay, first of all, let's just get this, let's get kind of an overview. Exactly what is All the Bitter? What is it about? Kind of where did this idea come from? And tell me just a little bit more about the journey, kind of how this became to be. Because, like I said, I talked to you, I mean, we talked about it just briefly. I've always kind of thought about using like regular bitters as an opportunity to have a lower alcohol by volume drink, right? And I know people do that, but you decided to take it and make All the Bitter non-alcoholic completely. So tell me about that.
So I'll kind of start with our backstory a little bit because that
Yeah.
that leads into why we decided to do this. My wife Carly and I met at the French Laundry. We worked together as sommeliers, so our lives revolved 100% around wine, beer, spirits, alcohol, drinking. Studying. We'd get up in the mornings to go do wine tastings. We would taste and study at work. We
Yeah,
would
and French Laundry, for those of you that don't know, is like a famous restaurant in Napa, right? So it's a pretty like high wine region.
Exactly, and we spent essentially all of our time either working with or just consuming wine for ourselves, and we drank too much. Yeah, that's a fact. We drank too much, and we had kids and decided when our first son was a few months old that we were going to quit drinking, that we couldn't continue to drink the way that we were. um, Kids don't care if you're hungover. Kids don't care if you are, still drunk at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning. They are going to wake you up and need things. And it became very obvious very quickly that we couldn't continue living the way that we were. So we both decided to quit drinking. That was a little over 3 years ago, and we got really quickly, the timing, fortunately, of the non-alcoholic beverage space, of the
Yeah.
boom of the craft non-alcoholic beer market, which is a crazy
Hmm.
thing to say, but that boom started right around the same time. And we discovered that there were non-alcoholic IPAs, non-alcoholic stouts and porters and sours, and all of the same, beers, the same flavors that we love so much. We realized that we could continue enjoying those flavors and enjoying the ritual of drinking those things without the negative consequences that we were trying to avoid. So we pretty quickly dove way, way, way down the rabbit hole and built a bar with 70 plus non-alcoholic spirits, a wine fridge full of non-alcoholic wine and beer. And we're making, amazing, delicious non-alcoholic cocktails every night. But we realized that one of the things that was really missing from the marketplace, there were so many options for spirits, but one of the things that was missing were truly non-alcoholic cocktail bitters.
Hmm.
And this leads into now why create non-alcoholic cocktail bitters? Because as you touched on, you can add a couple dashes of Angostura or any other traditional cocktail bitter to either a non-alcoholic cocktail or a glass of soda water and create a very, very, very low alcohol drink.
Right.
You can keep it under 0.5% alcohol. You can even you can keep it technically non-alcoholic. Or if you're adding a few more dashes, it'll raise the alcohol percentage slightly. It might be end up being 1% if you add let's say 5 dashes of
Right.
bitters to a drink. Still not going to get you drunk, not going to get you buzzed. It's the
Right.
same thing as vanilla extract. There's no problem with that, but it's an entirely personal decision.
Decision. Sure.
we
Yeah.
we keep we don't drink, but we keep alcoholic bitters on our bar. We use them occasionally. We use ours more now because we enjoy them. But
Uh-huh.
we still, I don't have a problem using alcoholic bitters in my drinks. But lots of people do. There's a ton of non-drinkers, I'm sorry, that fair enough aren't comfortable, with putting a few dashes of 40% alcohol on top of their otherwise non-alcoholic drink. You're
Right.
you're adding a very little amount, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still 40 to 45% alcohol.
Right.
There's a comfort level. You can absolutely take the top off that bottle of Angostura and drink it, and you will get drunk. You can absolutely get drunk on bitters.
Yeah. I don't know that you'd want to, but wow,
Yeah,
that just sounds.
you certainly can. There are cocktails that are made with 2 ounces of bitters.
Yeah.
It will get you just as drunk as anything else. But of course, using it in small amounts doesn't have that effect. So we wanted to create an option for the folks out there that weren't comfortable using alcoholic bitters and were essentially cut off from so many wonderful cocktails like an old fashioned, a Manhattan, a
Right.
Sazerac, all these drinks that you can now make with non-alcoholic spirits, but you previously had to use an alcoholic cocktail bitter. We wanted to create essentially analogs, kind of one-to-one replacements for the traditional bitters out there, like Angostura, Peychaud's, and orange bitters. We wanted to create something that was still unique. Our bitters are very herbal. They're very unique. They don't taste like anything else, but they are close enough to those traditional bitters that if you were making a non-alcoholic cocktail, you can very easily just swap them in and not have to, kind of worry about how much alcohol you're adding to your drink.
Right. And I love these. And also the thing I love about your story and and bitters in general, right? I mean, there are actually good health benefits to including bitters in your life, the non-alcoholic version of them. Obviously, when we are talking about alcohol, and I talk about it all the time here, whenever you're drinking alcohol, and even if it is a low alcohol by volume, spirit like a bitters is, you are still consuming alcohol, right? And the safest amount of alcohol is 0. So when you are making a conscious decision to be alcohol free, you can also incorporate these non-alcoholic bitters into your life for positive health benefits that exist within them as well, right?
Absolutely. And that was one of the before we got started, that was one of the most important things to me was blending both flavor and function. And cocktail bitters, it got their start in the 1800s. They were taken as a daily tonic. They were taken as medicine.
Digestive, right? Digestive
Correct,
bitters.
yeah.
That's kind of the idea. Yeah.
Well, they were back then. They were used for a wide range of crazy things that obviously they didn't actually do. It was a bit of a snake oil thing. They were supposed to cure jaundice and kidney failure and erectile dysfunction and
the whole thing,
bad back, everything. They were touted as being a cure all for everything. We know that they don't do that, but they do absolutely AKA benefit.
Just another reason for somebody to get to drink it in the first place. Right?
Well, correct. And that's where the evolution of bitters to cocktails came in, is that at some point somebody said, these don't taste very good, but I'm supposed to take them as medicine. So what if I mix them with a spirit? What if I mixed it with whiskey or brandy? Right. That'll make it taste better. It's the spoonful of sugar. Except that spoonful of sugar was 2 ounces of liquor. At 9 o'clock in the morning as you were waking up. And it was like, no, honey, I have to take this right now. So one thing led to another. And eventually cocktail bitters came to be a key ingredient in cocktails. They never lost their functional benefit. Bitter flavors, bitter roots, bitter herbs essentially wake up our digestive system. You when you taste bitterness, your brain says, oh, I'm probably not supposed to be eating this. And it starts to produce more bile. It starts the digestive juices flowing essentially, and gives you an easier time digesting your food. So there's still inherently a wonderful benefit to bitters, whether alcoholic or non-alcoholic. That bitter flavor is incredibly beneficial. We decided to stick to the same traditional flavor profile as the modern cocktail bitters that you'll find, on the market today, but really decided to lean into those functional benefits and those functional ingredients. So rather than just using gentian, which is a very classic bittering agent, we decided to also include dandelion root and burdock root and yellow dock root and ginger and milk thistle seed and adaptogens like holy basil and schisandra berry and all these wonderful things that work really well in the flavor profile of bitters, but also really do a wonderful job of helping your digestive system, help, clean your liver, help you detox, help clean your blood, all those things that you get the benefit of while you're just enjoying a tasty drink. It's not like having to
Yeah.
take your medicine. You're just like, I want a nice drink right now. And you get that nice benefit from it.
So you mentioned some of the key ingredients. One of the things I read on in terms of your story is just how dedicated to the craft of making these small batch bitters that you guys are. So tell me a little bit more about that, because I now I'm not going to be able to remember the way that it's phrased. But you forage. Oh yeah, that was it. Foraged. like I get this image of you guys really really taking a lot of care to, you know, trial and error and creating these non-alcoholic bitters.
It's one of the things that we enjoy most about doing this. So, our background, we sold wine for a living, and beer and spirits, and we sold other people's stories. And starting this brand and starting our own company was our chance to do it ourselves and to be the people creating it. And it's such a wonderful experience. And there's, there's different ways that you can go about creating a product. Most products are made by somebody else. You
Mm-hmm.
develop a recipe, a formula, and then you have a co-manufacturer make it for you. It was really important to us right away that we did it ourselves. We wanted to get our hands dirty. We wanted to touch our product ourselves. We wanted to do all the work ourselves, both for quality reasons, but also just for fun, to make us, we wanted to feel connected to what we were doing. And so we use organic ingredients and we use wild foraged ingredients. We don't do
Wild
the
forage. That was the
we
word.
we don't do the foraging ourselves.
Well, I
Those
like visualizing it that way, Ian.
you
So,
can
just
visualize it
go with
that
it.
way
All right.
if you want to. Yeah, absolutely. What we did do though was last year, when before we were getting started, we built a garden. We built about 10 garden beds, and we intended to grow as much of the raw ingredient ourselves as we could. And we spent, I don't know, months building these beds and filling them with dirt and planting, 15 of our of the plants that we use, and all the time watering it and tending for it. And we realized pretty quickly that we did not have the time
Yeah.
to farm
Uh-huh.
if we were going to be developing recipes, physically making it, doing all the shipping ourselves, which we do, everything else that goes along with a business, social media,
Yeah.
customer service, website, uh, just basic business functions.
Something's got to give. There's only 24 hours in the
You
day.
can only do so much. And we have two kids. That's why we
Yeah, I was
stopped
gonna say, oh
drinking. So
yeah, and then you have kids, right?
we have a 2-year old and an almost 4-year old. And they keep us on our toes. They keep us on a schedule with very little sleep. And we realized pretty quickly that we were not going to be able to maintain this garden in the way that we hoped we could. And we ended up getting a very very little harvest from it. Most of the things we tried to grow, we're not gardeners. We are not farmers. We've brought in, maybe 15 house plants and killed most of them. Um, we have a very deep respect for
Yeah.
farmers and gardeners. And honestly, at the end of the day, that's kind of why we did that. And the experience wasn't lost at all. We did successfully harvest some ashwagandha that we used in some lavender bitters. That was pretty cool. We harvested a couple other things successfully, but the most important thing is that it really gave us an appreciation for how much work goes into farming, gardening, growing things, how much water it requires, how much time it requires, how much physical labor and effort goes into harvesting, cutting, drying these ingredients. There's no way that we could do that ourselves, but it gave us an incredibly deep respect for the farmers that we work with and the
Yeah.
product that we get.
Yeah.
And so being able to, physically receive that product ourselves and make this thing from start to finish, rather than, sending it off to somebody else and having them do it for us, it is incredibly satisfying, and is really, it just as
So you
difficult
still
as
do that. So
starting.
you're still doing
We
the
do.
production part, which is pretty amazing in and of itself,
We
I
do.
think.
We there's we had
Now
a
I'm
number
now
of
beyond wild foraging. I'm getting this like, mad scientist, like boiling pots kind of image happening too. So
there is that's definitely there. That's a real thing. We've talked about the different ways that we could go about this, and over the last year, we launched about 12 months ago, and the response has been absolutely wild. We
mhm.
made and shipped 30,000 bottles of bitters last year, and
Wow.
considering when we started, we had no idea if people were actually going to want or need
Right.
non-alcoholic cocktail bitters, because again, most people are comfortable using alcoholic
Right.
bitters in their non-alcoholic cocktails. We weren't sure if there would be enough people that really that wanted these, and it was very apparent very quickly that there
Turns
was a
out,
need
yes, yes, there
there
are.
was a need
Yep.
for them, and
Turns out, yes,
we
there are.
for the last 12 months have really just been kind of struggling to stay afloat and keep up with demand, which is great. But the question has obviously come up a couple times. Do we want to continue doing this ourselves? Should we outsource this? Should we
Right.
outsource shipping? Carly, who does all of our shipping, would like to outsource the shipping. We go back and forth on it. But everything that we do has had such a positive impact on the folks that purchase our bitters. And it's obvious when you open that package that it was made by real people, that it was not assembled by by an assembly line. It was packaged by a real person who actually made this and put love and care into it. And that's a feeling that's kind of hard to come by, in the modern world with
Yeah.
most of what we buy. And I think it's really obvious when you open our package, which is what we were going for. So we decided to continue doing this ourselves the way that we're doing it now, but to scale up, to get bigger tanks, better equipment, hire some employees, get a bigger
Yep.
space. So we're in the process of doing that right now. We're doing a very small scale up. We were working out of about 150 square foot area of a shared commercial kitchen. And we moved into a larger dedicated room in the same commercial kitchen that's about 450 square feet. So
All
not
right.
much bigger, but we have 3 times the space now.
Mhm.
So we got some of that equipment, we got those tanks, and we're working on making bigger batches faster and better than we did
Mhm.
before, and hiring some employees to take a little bit of that day-to-day work off of our hands, while we still will be there physically, overseeing it and jumping in, and we'll still be doing plenty
Yeah.
of the dirty work, but we'll have some assistance with it, which we haven't really had in the last 12 months.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I appreciate the decision to stick with it in terms of keeping it in your purview at a certain point in time. If you really get, well, I don't even think you do. I mean, I think you just, you get to the next, you do what you do, what you've done, and go from the 150 square foot to the 450, and then you eventually build your own commercial kitchen, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
don't have to outsource. And I think that is a great lesson for people, especially in this world where we're so quick to send off our control to something else. And it seems like it can sound like the right answer for a lot of people. And I appreciate the decision to keep it. Just a quick break to talk with you about Sunnyside. You hear me talk about it on the podcast, and truthfully, I have so many students and group members that share with me how Sunnyside is their preferred tool. It helps them build their healthier drinking habits and really create that peaceful relationship with alcohol. It's a tool that I feel very confident in recommending. And the Sunnyside team has recently, in September, launched a new iOS app. And that iOS app is going to just enhance the existing text message experience. It makes it easier to build healthier drinking habits for anyone looking to cut back or simply drink more mindfully. The new Sunnyside community is also available only in the new iOS app, and it gives you access to an engaged community of like minded people who are also on a journey to cut back on drinking and build healthier drinking habits. It's a safe, private space, and you'll get access to inspiration and advice from Sunnyside members as well as coaches. I encourage you to go check out Sunnyside. Go to www.sunnyside.co/Molly to get started on a free 15-day trial. That's www.sunnyside.co/Molly. Tell me about the flavors, the flavor profiles that you all have that are not the same names as the traditional bitters, but what they correlate to.
Yeah, so we started with very intentionally three bitters that were inspired by what's kind of the holy trinity of alcoholic cocktail bitters, what you'll find behind every bar. The first is Angostura. So if you're making 90 something percent of classic cocktails, are going to call for Angostura, or what's referred to as an aromatic bitter, which is a little confusing because all bitters are aromatic. Most things are aromatic. But the category of bitter, the general flavor profile is called an aromatic bitter. And so that's what we called ours. It's just called aromatic bitters. And the flavor profile is a lot of warm spices, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, allspice. We use a lot of ginger. There are, like I mentioned earlier, there's a wide range of bitter and earthy ingredients: dandelion, burdock, yellow dock root, gentian root. So a lot of bitter, earthy, spicy, and spiced flavors in the aromatic bitters.
That sounds like something really good in tea to me. Like I
Great
would
in
love
tea.
putting that in tea.
Really good in tea. And that's one of the things that people um, maybe don't realize about bitters until you start playing around with them, is that they can go in anything. Bitters are the salt and pepper of the bar cart. They're like seasoning for your drinks. You're only adding a little bit. You're adding a couple dashes, 2 milliliters, 3 milliliters to your drink. The same essentially as a pinch of salt in food, or a squeeze of lemon on food. It's really meant to highlight existing flavors in your dish or your drink, to balance things like sweetness or tartness, and to add a little bit of its own unique additional flavor. So that bitterness is balancing elements of the drink, but it's also lending just a little bit, because you're only adding a couple dashes. It's lending its own bitter flavor, its own, spiced flavor, and whatever else is in that particular bitter. So, for instance, our New Orleans bitters, which is inspired by a very classic bitter called Peychaud's, which is used in a Sazerac cocktail. A lot of the same warm spices, but the difference in ours is that you have tart cherry in there. We use hibiscus, rose hips, and a really good amount of anise, which is the classic flavor profile of Peychaud's. Right away, immediately when you smell it, you're going to get a big hit of anise. So if you don't like licorice, for instance, if you don't like that anise flavor, you're probably not going to enjoy these. But if you do, the combination of flavors is absolutely wonderful. It's our most fruit forward bitter because it does have that cherry. But it's just super complex and tart and really just kind of wonderful on its own. That's our favorite to just mix, I think, with soda water to make a bitters and soda. That, along with a squeeze of lime, is really satisfying. But yeah, you can use any of these in coffee, tea, water, ginger beer, tonic, cocktails, obviously. But any number of drinks you can add these to. So that's our New Orleans bitters. And the last is an orange bitter. The inspiration for ours came specifically from a classic orange bitter called Regan's, which has a good amount of cardamom and coriander. So we use that in our bitter as well. But again, like the rest of our lineup, it's, kind of classically inspired, but still entirely unique. We use a wider range of herbs, of roots. There's a very interesting herbal flavor and aroma to our orange bitters. We use lemon balm in there, which really separates it and makes it very distinct from any other orange bitter that I've tried. Again, along with, a host of warm spices like cinnamon and ginger and nutmeg, and there's a couple other things in there as well. But a very, bright, kind of zesty flavor profile while still being, pretty warm and herbal. Just a very, very complex bitter.
Wow. I'm excited to get all these, try all of these. I'm really like I can see so many uses for them. I know that for one of the things that I've learned is the tannins in tea kind of can be similar to people, especially for wine drinkers. In general, the non-alcoholic wine industry seems to be not quite as sophisticated as everything else. No one seems to be able to, very few non-alcoholic wines that people really truly love, and especially for red wine drinkers. And so one of the things that I've heard or learned is that the tannins in tea for people that are red wine drinkers, they can be really appealing. So I can see that maybe, combining tea and non-alcoholic bitters would be something that, especially maybe the one with the tart cherry in it, might give somebody a real, a
Absolutely.
red wine-ish experience, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. No, you're 100% correct. There's a trick with tea. If you over steep it, so, let it sit for 10 minutes in the hot water as opposed to the 5 that you might
Yep.
normally, you're going to extract more of those aggressive tannins that you might not like in tea on its own. If you're just going
Right.
to drink that cup of black tea straight, you're going to think, oh, there's something wrong with this. But it does work to give you that same kind of abrasive tannin that makes your mouth think, oh, I'm drinking something. I'm drinking an adult beverage.
Right.
It forces you to slow down in the same way that the tannins in wine do. There's actually a recipe in the cocktail book that we send along with all of our orders. It's essentially a play on red wine using oversteeped black tea, a shrub. We use a blackberry rosemary shrub, which is shrub. If you're not familiar, shrub is basically drinking vinegar.
Oh.
It's vinegar combined with fruit, any number of spices or herbs that you might want to throw in there, and sugar. Um, you don't drink it on its own. It's meant to be mixed with sparkling water,
Mm-hmm.
but you can also use it in cocktails as a cocktail ingredient. You can use half an ounce or an ounce of shrub, and it's an incredibly satisfying addition to non-alcoholic cocktails because that vinegar gives you a kind of a little punch. The tartness of vinegar again forces you to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the mocktails of the last 20 years was that they were basically just juice and soda. There's
Right.
nothing slowing you down, so you're
Mm-hmm.
essentially drinking a glass of juice. Doesn't feel like an adult cocktail.
Yeah. And a
Adult
lot
the
of sugar in it too. So
correct
it's like, yeah,
exactly.
right.
What separates cocktails from any other drink is that you drink it slowly. Alcohol obviously forces you to drink it slowly. It's complex. You stop, you think about it. You can pick out nuances of the drink as you drink it. A mocktail made from juice and soda and syrup doesn't do that. You can chug it. Things like shrub and oversteeped tea, the tannins in tea, force you to drink a little more slowly. They force you to sit there and kind of contemplate and think about what it is you're drinking. So this recipe in our book, it basically combines tea, shrub, um, verjus, which is a very tart grape juice. So it's actually verjus is made from wine grapes that aren't fermented and they're picked very early. So they're more tart than they are sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yes, like you mentioned, our New Orleans bitters or our aromatic bitters, which share a lot in common with the flavors in wine. And so those things all combine to make, essentially a very satisfying, very complete drink that's reminiscent of wine. It's totally different. It's not going to fool you
Right.
into thinking that it's
Yeah.
wine,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it does provide the same kind of satisfying experience where it's balanced. There's there's a long finish. There's a roundness of flavors. There's a beginning, a middle, and end. There's an interesting aroma. You can sit there and actually smell it, and taste it and sip on it and enjoy it for a little while.
This coming from a sommelier, folks. So obviously, yeah, right. You know your stuff. So I would bet that recipe is one worth checking out. Ian, tell the folks here how they can learn more about All the Bitter.
So our website and our social media are going to be the best places to go. Our website is allthebitter.com. And you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. We don't do Twitter um, or
That's okay.
TikTok.
Just yep, right.
We're
Yep.
not there yet, but Instagram and Facebook, you can find us at All the Bitter.
Awesome. We will put that in the show notes, folks, so you can check it out. I just can't wait for people to go check more out. I hope Carly is ready to do some more packaging because I have a feeling that you're going to get some more interest here.
She is. We are as difficult as it is to ship 30,000 bottles of bitters in a year. It's something that we we love and is incredibly gratifying and satisfying. So we'll look forward to it.
Yeah, this has been it's been a great year, and I can only imagine things are going to keep growing for you. So all the best. Congratulations on it. And like I said, folks, we'll put links in the show notes. Ian and I are working on a discount code. We'll probably pop that in there too. And check it out, allthebitter.com. I think you're going to love it. I can't wait to try it. If you liked it, loved it, I'd love to hear from you. So thank you, Ian Blessing, for being on the show, and all the best to you, Carly, and the kids.
Thanks so much for having me, Molly.
Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping you change your drinking habits and to create a peaceful relationship with alcohol. Use something you learned in today's episode and apply it to your life this week. Transformation is possible. You have the power to change your relationship with alcohol now. For more information, please visit me at www.mollywatts.com.